Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Meet the Candidates. I'm your host, Jonathan Grabowski. It's a great spring 2024 town election season in Marshfield, and we'll be talking with various candidates running for office during this election season. And joining me today is the incumbent candidate for the Select Board, Jim Kilcoyne. Jim, thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure to join you. Thank you for having me.
So it's nice to have you back, and so we're going to talk about, the past few years, how it's gone, what your thoughts on it, and also kind of the next 3 years of about why you're running. So for those who don't know you, first off, who are you? Who's Jim Kilcoyne?
Okay, thanks. Well, I moved to Marshfield in 1978. I have two sisters that live local. I have a brother that lives in California. Mm-hmm. My mom was a nursery school teacher, and my dad was a cop in Situate. I graduated from the University of Massachusetts with a degree in management and economics. And I have a 16-year-old daughter who I'm very proud of.
Awesome. So talk about your community involvement. Becoming a select board member wasn't your first kind of step into being active in the community.
No, so I served almost 6 years on the Conservation Commission. The last three, I was chairman. Mm-hmm. And then there was an opening on the select board, and I moved into the select board for the last 3 years. So I've basically dedicated the last decade to community service to the town of Marshfield.
So jumping the time machine to 3 years ago, what made you decide to run for select board?
Well, it sort of dovetails with what I was saying before, is that being on the Conservation Commission, mm-hmm. We rewrote the 505 regulations, which for people that don't know what that is, it's really the regulations of the bylaws. It was the first time it was done in 20 years. They were quite outdated. I had been there, now it was chair for 3 years, and there was an opening on the select board, and I thought it was another opportunity to be able to serve the citizens of Marshfield.
So, past 3 years, talk about some of the accomplishments.
Yeah, one of the two things I'm most proud of has to do with the schools. The first one is the preschool, then on the corner of 3A and Furnace Street. We have a lot of dual working families, and this saves them thousands and thousands of dollars. Mm-hmm. And the other side is I was a very strong supporter of our effort to join South Shore Vote Tech. And for those that have been keeping up with the news, vocational jobs are becoming critically important in this economy, whether it's a plumber or electrician, and this will be able to provide up to 50, maybe more of our students to be able to go to Social Vote Tech to follow the actual career that they want to follow. I also was a big supporter of the Bullnose project. Now, that's a project that had been going on for a very long time. And I supported that. It went through town meeting and it got passed. And I think it's going to start work on it sometime early, late spring or this fall. Also, another key thing that I achieved was during the COVID, because COVID was my first.
Oh yeah, it was.
I came into COVID, hit everyone, you forget, but you couldn't even drive on the roads. Right. And so we opened the clinic, mm-hmm. Which not only served the citizens of Marshfield, but served the greater southeast mm-hmm. region of Massachusetts. And that was a key thing. And also we got a lot of money from ARPA. ARPA's American Rescue Protection Act. And I dedicated through a vote with my peers, $4 million of that money to replace and repair badly needed water and sewer mains. Right. Basic infrastructure, but needs to be done. Right.
So what's that one thing you didn't realize at the time that you know now about being a member of the select board?
You have to have more patience than you think.
Really?
I thought it took quite a long time to achieve objectives in the private business sector, but government even takes longer. You have to be able to really work well with others, compromise, put your own feelings into a box and try to get things done. But something that really did surprise me is the level of vitriol that we have in society today. And I don't think that personal attacks are particularly good for the town of Marshfield. We're just local people, not someone that's in Washington. And I think that's very important that we address that, and I think this race is a key race regarding that.
Okay. So were there things that you could take from your experience beyond conservation and apply to being on the select board?
Such as like a conservation commission, something like that. Yeah, conservation is a quasi-judicial regulatory body. The select board is the executive branch of government, and it really has to do with policy and finance, and then hiring and appointing the right people.
Right.
So the transferable skill sets there are soft skill sets. There really aren't overlap on regulations, and so I brought my business skill sets forward into Concom. The same thing here.
Right.
It's actually interpersonal skill sets, working through others, achieving things through others.
Right. So if you could jump in the time machine to when you first took office as a select board member, what would you tell yourself?
You just have to be patient. Things take time. You have to work with a lot of other various boards. We have a lot of elected boards in this town. And achieving that takes time, but if you stay with it, everyone always comes together in the end and does the right thing for the town.
You mentioned other boards, and there's a lot of other boards and committees in town, and the
Yes, there
select
are.
board, they all serve as liaisons to various boards and committees. Talk about some of the boards and committees you've been liaison to.
Sure. So one of the biggest things is the chairman of the select board picks all the liaison responsibilities each year. So your liaison responsibilities change, which is good because you get different exposure to different parts of the town. I chose this particular time to take on ZBA. I had a lot of work with waterways and conservation on that side of the town, but ZBA and planning is a very, very important part of how this town works and how they interface with the people of the town. And so I've spent a lot of time working with ZBA and planning. I speak to the ZBA chair at least twice a month regarding agenda, what they're doing and understanding it, and then I watch all the tapes and read everything about the ZBA decisions.
Just looking at what they've been working on over the past year. You picked a heck of a year to
Yes.
work with those two
Yes, I
boards
did.
and committees. So let's jump to now. So why have you decided to seek re-election?
I've decided to seek re-election because I think there's a lot of things that I still need to do. I'm not sure if people understand, but Marshfield is a $115 million business. It's a big business, and when you come into it, there's a lot of things you need to learn, and it really takes you a couple of years to understand how everything works. It's a big business, and understanding how to run it properly from a policy and fiscal perspective. Year 3, you kind of get in your groove, and so I want to run again to address those things I spoke about before, which is a lot of the infrastructure, protecting our water, schools, and things like that.
Excellent. So we like to do a little Civics 101 here because we, throughout the show we interview with a lot of different people that are running for a lot of different positions. Civics 101, what's the role of the select board?
Well, the role of the select board is pretty straightforward. It is the executive branch of the town, and they are responsible for the various appointments and hiring of key people and then holding them responsible to achieve those goals and objectives, as well as the fiscal side of the town. So you have money and policy. Ultimately, though, even though we vote to put it on the warrant, the article on the warrant, it's the people of Marshfield at town meeting that make the decisions.
Yeah. So what's interesting about Marshfield, the select board itself, is that it's a board of 3. There's a lot of other towns that surround us that have larger boards.
Yeah.
And I know the Charter Review Committee a few years ago discussed about increasing the number. Do you think Marshfield would benefit Marshfield if they expanded the select board number of seats?
Well, that's an interesting question, and quite personally, I've gone back and forth with that a few times in my head, and I've come to the decision that I think 3 is appropriate for our town.
Really?
Yeah, at this time.
Okay.
If you look at the other communities around us, I think we're the only town, maybe there might be another on the South Shore that has 3 versus 5. So we're definitely an outlier. But the reason why we're an outlier is because in all those other towns, the Department of Public Works is under the select board. So those select boards have a much heavier workload, a much heavier financial responsibility. So if we were looking at, and I would support doing this, bringing the DPW underneath the select board, I think that'd be a wonderful opportunity to look for with that increased responsibility to moving to 5.
Never thought of it that way. Interesting. So what's something that the select board does well and something that as a group or maybe you think like, hey, maybe there's something that we can improve upon?
Well, as I said, one of our roles in civics is to make sure we hire the right people and we appoint the right people. I think we do extremely well in vetting the people that we both hire and the people that we appoint. We have review committees. We go through them and vet them very thoroughly. I think two perfect examples of great people that we've hired is on the financial side of the town, which is a key objective of mine. And we've got a great new treasurer. He used to run the city of Portland, Maine, and also from Worcester. And this past week, we just hired our accountant, and she's going to be wonderful.
Awesome. That's great. So what's the biggest challenge that the select board's facing? And if reelected, how would you approach it? How would you work on it?
I think the biggest challenge is the 500-pound gorilla in the room, and that is all the municipalities in the Commonwealth are restricted to Proposition 2.5.
Okay, yeah.
And fiscal policy is one of the biggest responsibilities of the select board. So we're limited to 2.5% per year increase. Now, when you add in different fees or different other things, you come out to about 3.1%, give or take, each year.
Okay.
Now, if you look at the inflation report that came out just today, it's higher than that. If you look at the inflation that over the last 2 years, it's probably half of that. And so we have a facing financial crisis coming in front of us because we're just not able to keep up with the costs of inflation. And that's why it was very, very important to get our new treasurer and accountant in-house.
One of the things that you started doing, which I wish more elected officials did, was public meeting time. You know, just getting out in the community, meeting with, you know, townspeople. So talk about the reason for doing that and what you're looking to get out of it.
Well, thank you very much for asking that question. So with the demise of the local newspapers, it's extremely hard for the select board to get their point of view and perspective out. It's very, very difficult. And participating back and forth in social media is a nightmare, as well as it possibly could violate open meeting law. So I decided that I'd try something different. And I contacted the senior center. I said, I'd like to have like select board hours, and once a month come down. Anyone can sign up and meet me, talk about any concerns they may have so I can follow up for them. So I've been doing that for 6 or 8 months now. As a matter of fact, I'm having my next one on Tuesday at 10:30 at the senior center, and I'm doing that jointly with Senator O'Connor.
Excellent.
Yeah,
That's
it's
great.
worked out really well.
Really? So you're one of 3 members of the select board. So how do you go about working with the other 2 people? Because you're all great people, but you all have differing opinions, views, thoughts, ideas. So how do you go about working together?
Well, you've taped our meetings, and so we don't always particularly agree.
Right.
And I think that's necessary and healthy. I don't think there's anything
Agreed.
wrong with that. The key thing you need to do and understand, from my perspective, is we're all colleagues. Right. And you just need to be professional with your colleagues, respect their opinions, and have the proper decorum. And it's never personal. You just have your own perspective and they have theirs. And you keep it that way, and it works very well.
So if you're reelected, what's the one thing you want to work on? What's that one thing at the top of your mind, like, hey, I really want to work on this?
Well, there isn't one. So there's more than one, unfortunately.
A couple then.
I think, once again, I want to make sure we get through and get the South Shore VOTEC approved. I think we need to look at how we preserve our water supply and our drinking water supply. There's been some questions with some 40Bs that might be coming in on that, as well as we've got tremendous amount of aging infrastructure, whether it's buildings or water or sewer mains, and it's going to require more investment. And I think those are some key things we need to zero in on.
So talk about the work that goes into being on the select board. You're not just rolling in at 6:28 on a Monday and that you're like, okay, let's do it. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes in the prep, and I don't think people realize the amount of work that goes into serving.
Well, first of all, it's a privilege to serve, but I think people underestimate the amount of hours that you put in.
Exactly.
It's not a volunteer position. We do get, I think, about $20 a week. But it's basically a volunteer position, and it's hours and hours each week. And if you're chair, it probably doubles. It's almost like a full-time, part-time job. I happen to have the privilege of being retired, but my colleagues are not. And so it takes a tremendous amount of time. I personally read every email. I personally look at every spreadsheet. So it takes a lot of time and energy.
So we're on the home stretch here. So we get into our kind of fun questions, I guess you would say. So what's that thing that people don't know about you? What's that fun fact?
Well, there's 2 I'll give you. How's that?
All right.
The first is I'm the very proud father of a 16-year-old girl. She's a wonderful daughter. She'll turn 17 soon. I'm very proud of her. And the second thing is that my left knee hates me. So it's hated me for quite a long time. The last 3 years I've had arguments with my orthopedic surgeon because he wants to have it totally replaced, and I'm pretty fond of it. It's been with me for a long time. So those are two things that people may not know about me.
All right. Well,
I took it skiing this past year too, 4 times.
So we'll talk about the knee off camera.
Later.
I have some thoughts. New question that I added this time around. So what's your favorite thing in Marshfield?
The favorite thing in Marshfield that I have is a thing that separates Marshfield from a lot of the local communities. We're different from a lot of our local communities. We're not a monolithic community. We have a lot of diverse opinions. We have a lot of diverse people in this town. I really like that. I also like the fact, and what separates Marshfield from other towns, is that when things get really tough, they do pull together.
Absolutely.
They really have that esprit de corps, and I really like that. From a physical side, I love the beaches.
Yep.
I love the rivers and the harbor, and I spend a lot of time on all of them.
So last but not least, why are you the best candidate?
I think past performance is the best indicator of future activity. And if you look at what I've achieved in my career, I retired as a director of a multinational cardiac surgery business. I ran a $55 million business. I had international and domestic experience. I know how to achieve objectives through others. I know how to compromise. I know how to get things done. I understand the financial side of the business as well as the personal side. And I think those are very, very key things in being able to lead a town. And so that is why I think there's a big difference between myself and my opponent.
Great. Well, Jim, thank you so much for joining us today. I want to wish you the best of luck during this always fun election season.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me.
Great. And that's all the time we have for Meet the Candidates. And until next time, make it a great day.